Hello and welcome back to our channel. I am Armagan Rashid and you're watching Elite Tech YouTube channel. Hopefully you all will be fine. Let's start today. The last Lebanese banks in Iraq believe in a brighter future. If regional media are to be believed, the last few weeks have been full of promises of a bright future for the Iraqi economy, with the Gulf states playing the role of generous sponsors. On the one hand, 3 Qatari companies agreed with the National Investment Commission of Iraq to work on $9.5 billion worth of projects, including the construction of 2 power stations totaling 2,400 megawatts. At the beginning of the same month, Saudi Arabia signed a $1 billion agreement to build a residential and commercial district in the Iraqi capital, and in May, it set up a Saudi-Iraqi investment fund with a capital of $3 billion. The situation, which comes in the wake of the détente between Saudi Arabia and Iran on the one hand, and the normalization taking shape between the Gulf Cooperation Council and Israel on the other, is being closely watched by the last Lebanese banks that are still operating in Iraq. They hope that they would benefit from the momentum that is being shaped. The situation in Iraq has improved a lot recently. The country is benefiting from the efforts of the GCC, Saudi Arabia in particular, to stabilize and develop the region, said Chowki Badr, Assistant Director of Bank of Beirut and the Arab country's BBAC. This is good news for Lebanese banks, which have been able to maintain their presence despite the difficulties, he added, suggesting that they can now hope to see their tenacity rewarded. The World Bank already foresaw in its latest Iraq Economic Monitor, published in the fall, that the Iraqi GDP is projected to grow by 4% in 2023, following a rise to 8.7% in 2022, driven by world oil prices, which are higher compared to pre-COVID-19. Founded in the 1950s, BBAC is one of the 3 Lebanese banks to have continued to operate in Iraq. The bank has 3 branches in Baghdad, Erbil, and Sulaymaniyah. Only Byblos Bank, which operates in the same cities, and in Basra, is as well established, while the Middle East Africa Bank now only has its head office in the capital. The CBI suddenly decided one day that every foreign bank operating in Iraq is required to have assets worth at least $250 billion Iraqi dinars, around $190 million at the current exchange rate. This amount is equal to the capital that any Iraqi bank approved by the institution must have built up, said BBAC's Badr. And Iraq's president approved a record $152 billion budget that the parliament voted on earlier this month and which adds about 500,000 public sector jobs. Iraqi President Abdul Latif Rashid ratified the budget, which has a projected deficit of $48 billion. Parliament last week voted on the draft, 6 months into the fiscal year and after months of negotiations. The main sticking point during the talks was the distribution of oil revenue between the central government can monitor. Baghdad will then deduct that amount from its monthly allocation to the Kurdish regional government and transfer any surplus money to it. According to an official in Baghdad, the government expects the Kurdish region's oil exports by way of the Turkish port of Ceyhan, halted for several months due to legal disputes, to resume next week at a rate of 400,000 barrels per day. The official spoke on condition of anonymity under regulations. Iraq's president hailed the budget as a turning point for the government's implementation of its program, which includes securing the necessary needs of citizens, providing basic services such as health and education, rehabilitating the infrastructure, and initiating vital and strategic projects. The budget, which was also approved for 2024 and 2025 in the same amounts, includes substantial spending on increasing public wages and investing in reconstruction projects that have suffered from years of conflict. It also has provisions for raising salaries of public sector employees and the conversion of contracted workers into permanent public employees. Meanwhile, the country's Interior Ministry announced the openings for 37,100 members of IMF